Before this video start, I would like to make a short little message. This video was recorded prior to the getting of 800 mastery. This is a pretty old recording, so I actually just decided to just keep this recorded because of the current time that I'm making this video. You cannot do any 1-star dungeon because of Bonfest 2021 event. I'm not going to wait until the event goes away so I can actually start doing the dungeons. So the footage that you're going to see is just pretty much me just before the Bonfest 2021 event. I actually did put this video on a hold because of this same reason, because of Bonfest, and I wanted to do everything related to Bonfest and then go back into doing this video. Honestly speaking, I do have exactly the same stat. I haven't changed anything, and the stats are just equally the same right now as if were back then. The only thing is that I'm just slightly lower power rank, and by slightly lower power rank I literally mean like 3 or 4 power rank less. But yeah, that's going to be everything for today. I hope to still enjoy this video and enjoy the Boomeranger video.
Baba Bowie.
It's been a while now, hasn't it? Hello and welcome to another JMP video. I'm your host JonNario, or I should say, do you want to know how good is the Boomeranger in Uber 10? Then I'll tell you. So yeah, this is just going to be the Boomeranger Uber 10 video, and I will just be talking about all of the rest of the Uber 10 series right now after this one. So this is going to be the Boomeranger, then it's going to be the Draco on another video, and then lastly it's going to be on the Chloromancer. Again, I'm still doing some testing with the audio here and there, so just let me know in the comment section down below how does it sound. So yeah, also a couple of things that I'm going to mention. I don't remember a whole lot about the format on this series. I actually had to go back into my other videos and just see how it actually does work out. So if I do ramble quite a lot here and there during this video and the upcoming video, yeah, you could say that I'm pretty rusty. I will be using that as an excuse. Anyways, so today I will be talking about the Boomeranger. Boomeranger, it is a very popular character, and I will say that this is a character that a lot of people will say that it needs buff, myself included. I do feel that this character definitely needs buff. This is a character that definitely it is one of the weaker characters in the entire game. But before we move on into the why I think this is very, very weak, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and it does help me out quite a lot. Thank you for all the support on the recent videos. I really do appreciate it. Anyways, moving on. Here's my stats on my Boomeranger. You can pause the video if you want. Both my bow and my melee are exactly the same. They do have the exact same level. Both of them are crystal level 4. Both of them have the exact same stats. Nothing has changed. The stats are exactly the same. Speaking of crystal level 4, my set is going to be full crystal level 4 if I do recall correctly. It really doesn't necessarily matter what kind of gear level that I have, what kind of crystal level that I do have, but yeah, I do have, like, I do believe it's either crystal 3 or crystal 4 across all 16 characters. It's a combination between the two, a full set of crystal 3 or a full set of crystal 4. I do believe as of right now that I'm making this video, all of my characters do have at least one crystal level 4, so it might be a combination of crystal level 4 and 3 or full crystal 4, just to letting you know. So yeah, this is going to be pretty much my Boomeranger setup. I'm using attack speed, movement speed, all pieces of gear. This is pretty much what you should be using on the Boomeranger. Attack speed is almost essential with this character because this character benefits greatly from having a really good basic attack. And movement speed is just the best stat for any Uber 10 character, and I'm using movement speed on every single character like I mentioned in the previous videos. Speaking of movement speed, I do have movement speed banner, a movement speed buff ally which is animated jug. I do have Magifying ring. Magifying is the only way to go because this character doesn't have any energy. This character is very cooldown based. Speaking of cooldown, that's why I'm using the purple little food. I no longer am using the electronic crystals because of the Deep Dragons update. It pretty much used all of my electronic crystals due to the banner styles. Right now using the purple little food because of cooldown reduction. Martial and Trailblazing are just essential combination to any character that is physical damage for over 10. Martial because of damage, Trailblazing because of movement speed. Pretty much any character benefit from this, pretty much with the exception of the Neon Ninja, because the Neon Ninja is very easy to one-shot. But even with the Neon Ninja, it's still very, very helpful. I am also using the Conjurer's Gusto Vial because it's my own personal vial of choice, and then I subclass because of extra flash. Why not use it? So, yeah. In terms of equipment, like I just mentioned, as long as you have as much movement speed as possible and martial emblem, that is pretty much essential with this character because this character definitely needs as much damage as possible. So keep that in mind. Speaking of which, gems. What are the gems that I'm rocking? These are the gems that I'm rocking. Again, in terms of empower gem ability, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, those are the order that you're going to see on the right side on the screen, and my gem rolls, you're already seeing them right there. My recommendation combination with this character will be like the essential that you should be rocking with most of the character. Vampire Vanquisher, Pirate, these are a must to any Uber 10 character, but this character benefits greatly from having Explosive Epilogue. So Explosive Epilogue is very, very helpful with this character because this character has somewhat low multipliers, and not only that, helping out with the burst damage and crowd control would be really, really nice. Also, Classroom is very good with any class, so why not get it with this class as well. In this video, I will mostly be talking about suggestions that I think are going to be good to improve this character, because I'm not going to give away a lot of opinions saying, oh, this character is either good or bad. No, this character is bad. That's just saying, just straight up putting bluntly. So if you want my end result, what do I think of the character? Is bad. But it's fun. Even though it is bad, it can be fun at the end of the day. Again, this is just my own personal opinion. You have your own personal opinion. Try not to be rude in the comment section down below if you disagree with my opinion. I'm just going to give away my own personal opinion without pretty much any filter. Try not to sugarcoat it. I'm just going to say outright. Also, I will be just mentioning for the most part, what does this character need in general, instead of just going over all of the abilities in detail and just trying to just make it sound that they are good in any way, shape, or form. Some of them are pretty solid, at least 2 of them. But for the most part, I'm going to just mention my suggestion to improve this character. So yeah, those are my initial opinions with the Boomeranger. If you want to use it, just use it at late to end game, or if you want to use it for fun, you can do so. Let's start talking about finishing blow, the passive ability first, then going into basic attack, and then going into all of the abilities, and you know how it is. First of all, finishing blow. What it does is, for every 3rd basic attack, it will have a special effect. Your melee is going to have a spin attack that will do 3 lines of damage, and your bow will shoot 3 arrows instead of 1. That is on the 3rd basic attack. And if it does sound familiar, yes, this is pretty much exactly the same as the Vanguardian's passive ability, but the Vanguardian does extra damage, this does extra lines. And again, it's alright as a passive ability, but it only does that. It doesn't do anything else. It's not like it's going to do an extra thing alongside the extra lines to the basic attack. It's not that the Vanguardian that also has the passive ability that is touchdown, that actually does hit enemies once you are in the air flying for, like, I will say, like around a second. This one does not have anything. It's just literally that's literally the passive ability. In my opinion, one suggestion that I did have that will make the character not only unique but also interesting and also effective is just going to be, for every single enemy that you defeat, you reduce the cooldown by 1 second, pretty much making this character a very aggressive playstyle. If you defeat a lot of enemies, you can just use your ability more often, making this character much more interesting in my opinion, and just solidify the character as being a pure cooldown based character, because not a lot of characters are pure cooldown based. There's some of them, obviously Revenant, Dino Tamer, those are characters that actually come to mind that actually are cooldown based, but those characters actually have like really short cooldown on their abilities. This character does not. This character's all cooldown are rather long, so having a passive ability just cutting down all of those cooldown is going to be very, very effective. So that's my suggestion with the passive ability, alongside, what they did with the extra damage with the basic attack. So yeah, that would be my suggestion with the finishing blow. It's alright as a passive ability, but it needs more for sure. Speaking of something that needs more for sure, basic attack. I will start talking about the bow basic attack first, because the bow basic attack I feel is one of the worst basic attack in the entire game. And yeah, so one of the things that both basic attack on bow and melee share in properties is going to be the base attacks per second. The base attacks per second on both bow and melee is 1.25, so keep that in mind. 1.25 without counting the passive ability is going to be the base animation speed, which is exactly the same as the Revenant and Fate Trickster, so keep that in mind. It also, it does attack a little bit more due to the passive ability, but aside from that, that is literally it. It's pretty slow as a basic attack. Now, the bow basic attack does a 1.4 times damage multiplier. It is below average in terms of like regular damage multiplier across all characters, but considering that it only attacks at 1.25 base attacks per second, that is rather low and slow. And not only that, it is single target, and it has a 24 block range, which single target it shares amongst all long range basic attack, and being 24 block range, it is the shortest across all of the long range basic attack. So to put it into comparison, the Gunslinger's basic, something that I just said that is not that good in terms of basic attack, It does attack at a 2.5 base attacks per second, which is twice as fast comparable to this one. And aside from all of that, it also does the exact same damage. So the damage is going to be 1.4 as well, but attacks twice as fast, single target, and has more range. The Gunslinger basic attack is just overall better than this one. Even with the passive ability, this shoots slower than the basic attack on the Gunslinger, and the Gunslinger's basic attack is not good. So that goes to show how bad this basic attack is. It's one of the worst basic. Honestly, in my opinion, it should definitely be doing well over 2 times damage multipliers to serve as a DPS option for the Boomeranger, but with no crowd control. And it's going to make much more sense considering that the melee basic attack, it is going to be as follows. It's 1.7 times damage multiplier comparable to 1.4. So for some reason the melee does more damage. It has the 4 block range, which is just average across all close range character. And not only that, it does have really good crowd control. It attacks diagonally in front of the Boomeranger the first 2 hits, and the spin attack due to the passive ability hits all enemies around it. So it does have the same base attacks per second, but does more damage and has better crowd control. So it goes to show which one of them is better. So are you going to sacrifice great crowd control and more damage just for the extra 20 block range? In my opinion, that's not worth it. And honestly speaking, that's why you should only be going with the melee Boomeranger. For the most part. If you want to go with bow, if you want to have fun, then go ahead and do so. But with the melee, it's just a way to go if you want to be effective. So yeah, that's pretty much why the bow Boomeranger needs some really heavy buffs, especially in the damage department, because it attacks low and does low damage. And yeah, in my opinion, very, very weak in that regard. The basic attack, surprisingly, on melee is your main damaging ability for the most part. So yeah, that goes to show how bad the rest of the abilities are. The melee basic attack is not bad, it's solid. It is incomparable to something like the Candy Barbarian basic, but the Candy Barbarian has Vanilla Swirlwind as a spamming ability. This character does not have a spammer ability. All the abilities are based around cooldown, and those abilities have really high cooldowns, as you're going to see very, very shortly. Speaking of which, let's start talking about the first ability, Boomerang. So what it does is, when you press the ability, you're going to throw down a boomerang. That boomerang is a physical object that hits enemies. It will stun them, and it will travel back to you once it hits an enemy or a block. And yeah, once you travel, it will go directly to the place that you threw it. So you have to actually physically catch it, and once you catch it, you're going to reduce the cooldown all of your abilities. And that's pretty much what it does. So starting off with the damage multiplier, it's a 3 times damage multiplier. Very low for a damaging ability, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be a high damaging ability because this is mainly used for utility purposes. You know, it has 22 block range, which is decent. It stuns for 1.5 seconds, which is pretty good. And not only that, it has a cooldown reduction of 7 seconds once you catch it. So all those things that I just mentioned are all of the positive. But let's start talking about all of the negatives. Number 1, it's a 9-second cooldown ability. For some reason, even if you do catch the boomerang, you still have to wait 2 seconds. So this is not an ability that is going to perma-stun enemies in no way, shape or form, even if you do keep 100% uptime with the boomerang. It's not good. So that's number 1. Number 2, like I just mentioned in the beginning of the ability, is a physical object. Similar to the Shadowhunter's ultimate ability, being a physical object, it means that it can get stuck on enemies once it hits them, and it will happen very frequently with this ability. Yeah, if you get stuck on an enemy, it can do the damage, it can stun the enemy, but it will not go back, so you will not be able to reduce all of your cooldown by 7 seconds. So making this ability a 9-second cooldown ability if you throw it down against an enemy. And again, like I just mentioned, this will happen very frequently. It sucks. And the other thing is going to be the catching mechanic. The fact that you have to actually catch the ability, considering that you know how fast-paced Trove is, you can very easily miss this. Just letting you know, you can extremely easily miss this. Just by walking sideways with base movement speed, no movement speed equipment, you can easily just miss that one, just walking a little bit towards the side. It doesn't track, it doesn't do anything, it just goes back directly where you threw it. So yeah, the fact that you actually have to catch it, that's not particularly a good thing. So my suggestion to make this ability a better ability, because right now it's rather rough, it's very buggy, and considering that this is your cooldown reduction ability, it really needs some just changes here and there. So what I thought of a suggestion for this ability is going to be, if you throw down the boomerang, instead of being an actual physical object, it's going to be, you know, and like a projectile type ability. It will go through enemies and it will hit the enemy, and yeah, just hitting all enemies that is in its path with its 22 block range, and it will go back immediately. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, make it so that it does damage going once you throw it and once it goes back, and once it goes back it will do another 3 times damage, another 1.5 second stuff. That will be very, very interesting. Aside from all of that, just the caching mechanic should be just removed, and it should just go directly track towards where you're at. Considering how fast-paced Trove is, this should not be a mechanic implemented into the game, in my opinion. This should just be removed entirely, completely. Alright, so yeah, this is just pretty much my two option, and also the other one might be just reduce the cooldown to at least 8 seconds from 9. So once you caught it, it will reduce the cooldown to at least 1 second, so you don't spam it if you do catch it every single time, if it is 7 seconds or less. So yeah, you can make it like a 1 second cooldown pretty much if you throw it down, and if you catch it, so like an 8 second cooldown, but you can keep it at 9 as it is if you do implement the other thing. In my opinion, that is going to be my suggestion for this ability. It generally doesn't need damage bump, because you know, this is a utility ability. This is mainly used for stunning and mainly used for cooldown reduction. So yeah, that is going to be my own personal opinion on the matter. I will talk about both Big Bomb and Bog Bomb together. I will not be talking about Big Bomb separately to Bog Bomb, except one thing that I'm going to mention regarding Big Bomb and Bog Bomb. But yeah, I'm just going to be talking about mostly the Clash Gen, because you should be going with the Clash Gen either way. Because it pretty much both of them do exactly the same thing. The only thing is that Bog Bomb does slightly less damage on detonation for some reason, and it spawns the chicken. So Big Bomb and Bog Bomb. So what it does is you throw down a Big Bomb, similar to the actual item Big Bomb, and once it hits a block, it's going to start, you know, the timer until it detonates. It will detonate after 1.5 seconds, and once it detonates, it will destroy 2 blocks around it and 6 blocks upwards. So, and it doesn't destroy any blocks below it. So, which is weird considering that the actual Big Bomb destroys blocks below it. But hey, if they want to make it just like that, that is entirely fine by me, because obviously this is an ability that you can just throw it down for free, and the Big Bomb is a pretty expensive resource item. Yeah, just having a slightly downgraded version of it in terms of like destroying blocks, it's alright. So yeah, I'm going to mention the extra things that you get out of Bog Bomb. So once it detonates after 1.5 seconds, it will spawn the 3 chickens. The 3 chickens will be doing damage once every second for 8 seconds, and there's 3 of them. Anyway, number 1, why is this ability an 18-second cooldown? So that is around what, like, you have to wait, you have to throw down the boomerang, just catch it, wait 2 seconds, throw down the boomerang, catch it, wait 2 seconds, and why? It's like, why? At this point, just reduce the cooldown to at least 14 or 7 seconds, so you can actually just keep throwing down big bombs. Because this ability doesn't do a lot of damage. Without the Clash, it does 5 times damage once it detonates. With the Clash, it does 3 for some reason. And it spawns the chickens that does 0.75 times damage every second for 8 seconds. That is 0.75 times damage times 3. So that is 2.25 times damage multiplier across all 3 chickens. In my opinion, they should be doing a lot more damage. In my opinion, the Bog Bomb should be doing the same damage, 5 times damage multiplier, as the regular Big Bomb. I don't know why it does less damage. So my suggestion is just remove the detonation time, and you're pretty much good to go at that point, and reduce the cooldown to at least 14 or 7 seconds, so you can keep throwing down the ability. 14 seconds should be a little bit more ideal if you combine with the passive ability and the buff to the boomerang. It's going to make it a little bit more balanced and a little bit better. But in my opinion, they should just reduce the cooldown, increase the chicken damage, and increase the detonation damage, and remove the detonation altogether. Just make it like an instant cast ability, and it will do damage to all enemies around it. Is it going to make the ability overpowered? No, hell no. Do you know one ability that a lot of people don't talk about, and it works very similar to this? Glitter Bomb from the Fate Trickster. It is an instant cast ability, no cooldown. It stuns enemies, and it does 4.5 times damage multiplier, and pretty much it has the same radius as this ability. It does 0.5 times less multiplier than the Big Bomb, not the Bog Bomb. It's no cooldown, it stuns enemies, and so you can spam it and you can perma-stun enemy. With that ability, it has around the same range as the Big Bomb and Bog Bomb, and overall, and that ability is not considered to be one of the best abilities out there. And the ability is really good in my opinion, like the Glitter Bomb from Fake Trickster. But just having this an 18-second cooldown ability that does 0.5 times damage more without the chickens and 1.5 times damage less, and then you include the 3 chickens. That's not good. That's generally not good. In my opinion, just adding all those suggestions that I just mentioned is going to make the character better. And then we move on into the last ability, or the Mysterious Urn. The Mysterious Urn, or the ultimate ability, what it does is pretty much similar to the Big Bomb. You press the ability, you throw something down, you throw an urn, that once it hits the ground, it will hit all enemies around it in a 6x6 block radius, which is pretty big, and it will spawn 1 in 4 abilities 100% of the time. So you will get 1 of 4 abilities, and I will mention all of that in a little bit. But first and foremost, it does 6 times damage multiplier, the urn on its own. So once it hits the ground, it will do 6 times damage on a 6x6 radius. So again, like I just mentioned with the Big Bomb, this is pretty much like what I would like with the Big Bomb. Just throw it down, it will do damage immediately. And it does 6 times damage multiplier. Is this ability overpowered? Not really. It's not considered even like an amazing ability, but you know, instant damage multiplier ability is going to be really nice. It does 6 times damage multiplier. The range is pretty much infinite. It will just keep floating all the way until it hits 1 block. Once it hits 1 block, that's when it will detonate. And aside from all of that, it will have a 1 in 4 chances of spawning each of the ability. The first 2 abilities are going to be the utility abilities, which are going to be the healing gems and the cooldown gems. It has a 25% chance of spawning the healing gems, which will heal 80% to you and 7 nearby players, which is alright. It's pretty good. It's similar to like the Candy Barbarian's ult. It literally heals exactly the same thing, but you know, on a 25% chance rather than being guaranteed, but I digress. The other thing is going to be the cooldown gems. It reduces the cooldown of yourself and 7 nearby players by 12 seconds. Again, this should be just merged with the healing candy, or the healing gems I should say. And the healing gems and the cooldown gems, both of them should be together in one ability instead of just being separate. And in my opinion, yeah, those should be both of them together, so you actually get an 80% healing plus a 12-second cooldown reduction, making the ability, you know, a little bit better. And then the other one is just going to be the chickens. It will spawn 3 chickens similar to the class gem, and the chickens will do 2 times damage multipliers each instead of 0.75 from the class gem. For some reason, the class gem does a lot less damage. This is 2 times damage multiplier each for 3 of them, and they will last the exact same amount of time. I do believe it's 8 seconds or 15 seconds with the ultimate ability. I don't remember from the top of my head, but I do recall, I think it's 8 seconds. Either way, this ability is much better than the chickens from the class gem. For some reason, the chickens from the class gem does so low damage, but this one does not even good damage. It's decent. So yeah, it's so weird, like considering that all the things that this character has. And then we move on into the other ability, which is the actual good ability, which is the cluster bomb. But there's a problem with the cluster bomb. The cluster bomb, it will throw you, once you throw it down, it will spawn 7 cluster bombs. It will, all of those 7 cluster bombs, each and every single one of them will do damage. But the problem is that all of them can cause knockback. So if you have heard multiple people just talk about the Boomeranger with the insane knockback, this is why. This can cause ridiculous amounts of knockback, especially in something like those. You can send enemies just flying across the map. It's ridiculous. And if you don't one-shot with this ability, and let me tell you, if you're in U10 and you're not one-shotting with this ability, something's wrong with your Boomeranger. But each and every single bomb, there's 7 of them, does 4 times damage multiplier. That is a lot, by the way. 4 times damage multiplier times 7, that's 28 times damage multiplier, plus the 6 times damage multiplier from the urn itself. You're looking at a 34 times damage multiplier ability. That is mind-boggling, comparable. Like, just compare this ability to every single other ability or thing that this character has. You're going to see that this ability is just a league on its own. Like, if you remove the cooldown altogether, this ability is just borderline almost to the broken side because it's so ridiculous in terms of burst damage. It's one of the strongest burst damage in the entire game. Probably even the strongest single target burst damage in the entire game. It does more damage than the Neon Ninja Shuriken. It does more damage than 6 bombs from the Draco. Like 6 bombs from the Draco does less damage than this. Like all of them detonating at the same time. It does more damage than 2 Candy Barbarian ultimate ability combined. Like it is ridiculous compared like this ability. But it's on a 25% chance on a 30-second cooldown ability. But yeah, in my opinion, this should need some changes here and there. Number one, it should be like the cooldown and healing gems should be together instead of just being separate, so you actually have an utility. and then you have the chickens, and then you have the cluster bomb. In my opinion, the chickens and the cluster bomb should be together just for funsies, just having a damage one and just having a healing one, so be a 50-50 chance. So you actually get a 50% chance of actually healing all of you and just reducing the cooldown, and a 50% chance of spawning the cluster bomb and the chickens, so just having a ridiculous high burst damage ability. So yeah, it's going to work out similar to like the Candy Barbarian subclass, where it's a 50-50 chance of actually either getting a healing or a buff. In my opinion, this should be something like this with this ability in itself. That is going to be my suggestion. But yeah, those are all of the abilities with this character. Now you see why this character is pretty weak. It is comparable to a lot of other characters, and all of the other characters are just, you know, have an ability that just triumph over this in every way, shape, or form. And yeah, it is a shame, because, you know, all the ability have potential of being so cool, like so cool and so strong, but they're so weak. And honestly, yeah, if you want a character in terms of effectiveness, this is not one of them. So yeah, that is going to be my end opinion with the Boomeranger. Late to end game is where it's at if you want to be as effective as possible, but for the most part, this character is just weak right now. Is honestly underwhelming. It's one of the worst characters in the game in terms of effectiveness. For early, mid, late, and end game, it's one of the worst and everything. You already see why, and it doesn't have anything going for it. The basic attack being probably the best, and it's still like somewhat of a weaker version than the Candy Barbarian. The Candy Barbarian doesn't use the basic attack as a main damaging ability. Like, you get the point. It's pretty weak, but this game is all about stats either way. You're already seeing in the background footage just me just destroying U10 with the Boomeranger on both bow and melee. Like, this character, even though it is among the weakest, if you do have enough stats, you can still speed farm with this character. No matter the character that you're using, is far from the worst character in the entire game, especially for U10, considering that, you know, it has the mysterious urn being instant, it has really good crowd control on the basic attack, and really good crowd control in general. But also one thing that I forgot to mention is this character's survivability. I didn't mention anything as a survivability type ability. The only thing that it has going for as survivability is going to be the stun from Boomerang, but you already know the high cooldown that Boomerang has. And yeah, this character's survivability is among the worst in the entire game. I'm not even kidding. Not the chicken, nothing is going to save you, because everything takes so long to actually detonate or just to take into effect in terms of survivability. So in terms of survivability, is rather meh. And I will be mentioning that this character definitely needs buffs in every single category. So if I would like to say which are the characters that need rework, this is among the top, in terms of top 3, the characters that need rework immediately. Anyway, that is all for today. Thank you for watching, thank you for sticking around as always. Leave a like if you want to help the channel grow, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and that is all for today. Once again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Take care, and keep on hunting. Watch out on the next episode, which I'll be covering on the Dracolite.